Okay, I'd like to get our meeting moving again. As I said a moment ago, we started our meeting out in the library to welcome new staff members. We had new administrators in I think every single school, and new teachers and support staff as well. It's a wonderful group of people, and Wilton is very fortunate and honored to have them with us. At this point, we move on to, as we do at the beginning of every meeting, comments from the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to come up and speak? It looks like Sybil Finley is coming up to speak. We'll ignore that move. You can come up and speak later if you'd like. Seeing none, we move on to the consent agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look at the consent agenda? Can I have a motion to approve that?
So.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We now move on to reports and recognition. I just have a few comments this evening, and I'd like to really begin by thanking the administration, the staff, and all of the teachers that worked so hard this summer to get the schools ready for opening day. I've been on the board now 4 years, and I have to say this was really a very, very smooth start, and it's a tribute to all of the hard work that everybody put in. In addition to that, all of the staff that worked on the upgrades to the facilities, 2 new rooms in Middlebrook, bathrooms in Middlebrook and the high school, new roofs. It was a lot of work for a very short summer, and wonderful job. And then also I'd like to thank the Board of Ed for the time that they put in this summer. Obviously, we were disappointed to hear that our fearless leader, Dr. Richards, has decided to retire come the end of this calendar year. And that has mobilized the Board of Ed to convene a search committee with the objective of trying to fill those very large shoes. We think it's going to be a difficult task. We are going to do a broad, nationwide search. We expect it to be extensive and exhaustive. We intend to hire a headhunter to help us with that process, and we're currently working on the processes and procedures for that. With that, Dr. Richards?
Good evening. Each summer, as you know, and Mr. Leckley just talked about some of the things that we do during the summer to prepare for the school year. And as you know, because of last year's storm, which is not going to be replicated again this year, we had a somewhat abbreviated. Oh, Jesus! Right. We had a really abbreviated summer, which added to the challenge. In terms of the human resource area, as likely mentioned, we had the opportunity to welcome some of our new teachers who are here tonight. We also want to introduce again Dr. Michael Cicchetti, who is going to be serving as the interim HR director. As I've teased him before, Mike is a recovering superintendent and has really jumped in and done a great job of helping us in a very critical time in a very important function. So we're so pleased Mike's here. I got to know Mike when he was superintendent in Eastern Reading, Region 9, and he is much respected around us here and around the state. So we're really pleased you're here, Mike. Also, wanted to introduce again, the board's had a chance to meet these people in various venues, but Dr. Chuck Smith, you'll be hearing from Chuck, our Assistant Superintendent Instruction. Chuck comes to us from the Greenwich Public Schools, where he was the lead principal. He was principal of North Street Elementary. Also has a distinguished special education background. So Chuck has really been a wonderful addition to our team, and I know you're going to enjoy working with him and hearing from him tonight. Also, Dr. Jennifer Mitchell, who is principal at Cider Mill School. She also hails from Greenwich Public Schools, where she was the coordinator for K-12 language arts curriculum, and has really been an exciting addition to the Cider Mill team and brings us a raft of experience and strengths in so many areas. So welcome, Jen. As Dr. Cicchetti mentioned, the number of new administration, we have about 40% of our administrative team is either new to the district or new in positions. We've had Maria Coleman assuming principalship at Middlebrook, and Rich Sanzo moving into the associate principal chair at the high school. So we've had some wonderful, and Don Schultz was mentioned earlier, along with Damon and Jeremy. Chris McDougall, our athletic director, was not here tonight as the team had its first game opening against Guilford, and I rudely read the text he sent me, and the Warriors won 21-20 at Guilford. So it was a very good start to the season. Hopefully they were in better climb than we're experiencing now. During the summer, in addition to the recruiting work, it's just as Mike mentioned, we had a number of paraprofessional openings and sports staff, so there was a lot to do in the HR area this summer. In the area of curriculum instruction, once again, Ann's team operated an extended school year program. In the area of curriculum, we had 60 summer curriculum projects, and much of this work focused on curriculum mapping, which, as you know, has been an ongoing initiative for several years, and also, and you're going to hear more about this subject tonight, aligning our units of study to the Common Core of State Standards and the Wilton Public Schools Vision of Teaching and Learning. Other important work this summer included developing assessment tools, ways of assessing what students know and can do, additional work on implementing the Readers and Writers Workshop, and work on the Math and Focus program that we began last year. I'm also excited, and you heard her introduced this evening, that Terry Isidro has joined us to lead our STEM course at Middlebrook School, and she is an energetic, enthusiastic addition to our team. Finally, in the area of curriculum instruction, and we did not get our results on a lot of the standardized testing until very late in the summer, so we've been working on the analysis of this, and the board will receive a report in the fall semester. In the business office, our fiscal year ends June 30th, and Ken and his team were busy closing up the books for 2012-13. He will be giving a report later this evening on the end-of-year financial report, so we're looking forward to hearing that. And also in the business office, as you know, we board adopted participation fees, and Ken and his team worked with the principals on setting up the protocols and procedures for collecting the participation fees, and we really appreciate the work he's done in that area. Technology is always busy in the summer. Matthew and his group, we refresh every year a certain percentage of our computer technology. We install newly acquired technology, some of the new smart boards, other pieces of technology. Matt's group began working on virtualizing our servers, a huge task, which will continue. Wireless was installed throughout Middlebrook. He worked on coordinating technology projects, and a huge initiative opened the parent portal on Power School to all parents. And I shared with the board last week the percentage of parents who have gotten on board, and I think with the opening houses, we will see an increase in the number of parents who are utilizing the technology that we have to communicate with them. In the area of building projects, and Ms. Burke will be talking about these in a moment in more detail. If you haven't had a chance, our restrooms here, some of you I know have popped in just to check them out. I think a beautiful job was done. Karen will be giving you more detail about this project, both here and at Middlebrook. And then there was also a re-roofing project that was done at Middlebrook this summer. In the area of maintenance and operations, the annual summer cleaning at each building, the effort to spruce up some of the adjacent outside areas. The summer is also a busy time for routing and designing the student transportation system. So those are just some of the activities that happen in a very, very busy summer. In terms of the opening of the school, Mr. Likely mentioned, and I agree fully that we've had a good opening, and I do appreciate and second his comments about the work of the principals and our staff and getting everybody ready. One of the things we look at very carefully is enrollment. And at this point, it appears that our enrollment numbers are approximately 54 students over projection. For when you look at 13 grades, that's a little over 4 students a grade. That's a pretty darn accurate projection. The variances are as follows. Miller Driscoll is about 14 students above projection. Cider Mill is at 21 above projection. Middlebrook has about 11 more than we projected, and the high school has 8. So it's, again, a very good job that Ellen did, Ellen Essman, on that. Preschool enrollment, Dr. Repsinski reports that it's at 74 students, 49 students with special needs, and 25 typical learners. So again, the preschool is starting a little bit bigger, I believe, than in previous years. We will conduct, as the board knows, our annual census, student census. Official date on that is October 1st, and Molly has already sent information to Ellen Essman about preliminary numbers so she can begin looking and doing her work on the projections. Third topic, I want a piece of information I'm excited to report. I'm pleased I learned from the high school that we had 11 students this year who have earned recognition as National Merit semifinalists in the 2014 National Merit Scholarship Program. These students, as you know, took the PSAT as juniors, and they represent the top 16,000 out of over 1.5 million students who took the test, or less than 1% of the United States high school seniors. They will have the opportunity to go on in the competition. We've had a pretty good track record of semifinalists becoming finalists, and the number this year of semifinalists is the largest since 2009. Our hearty congratulations to Alex Bendix, Nicholas Dean, Alex Hirsch, Margaret Molly Hoke, Christopher Hume, Rachel Jones, Kurt Rubin, Ethan Siegel, Chase Smith, Kathleen Smith, and Ingrid Wang. So again, I know Bob communicates directly with these students and gives them our congratulations. We're very proud of them. Last item I have has to do with a note that we received this summer, late August, from Planning and Zoning concerning 385 Danbury Road. The Planning and Zoning Commission has received an application that's been filed with a plan to build a daycare center on the Burt property located at 385 Danbury Road, which is adjacent to next to the Wilton Deli, that White House that's not been occupied for many years. The current proposed project would be an 8,667 square foot building to be used as a daycare learning center known as Goddard School. And although we support the development of a child care center, we do have concerns about traffic pattern that would develop should the facility be allowed to construct an egress onto Lily Way. These concerns include the following. One, I think the drop-off times and pickup times for child care would likely coincide with the opening and possibly with dismissal times at Cider Mill and the high school. Second concern is that Lily Way is a very busy street, not only during the regular hours of school, but after hours as athletic practices, games, and other community events take place. Third concern we have is that we worry that a driveway with egress onto Lily will be used as a cut-through to Route 7. And then we're also concerned that the egress could also impact congestion on Catalpa and at the school road, Route 7, Lily Way intersection. It's our understanding that the developers have commissioned a firm to conduct a traffic study, and we'll be interested to see the outcome of this review. And in closing, I thought it might be helpful to just share with the board very quickly some pictures of some of the traffic patterns that we see on Lily Way. And it's this one on the side. Yeah. Oh, it's a miracle. Here you see the school buses that literally are from the door of Cider Mill School all the way down to Catalpa School. And thank Dr. Cicchetti for his photography in this project. He risked life and limb on the Lily Way today.
What I think is interesting about that picture is those buses are parked, correct?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, they're not moving.
So they're not moving. So if anybody wanted to go down that road,
Where do they do
Right.
there's no way to do it other than
Right.
if they wanted to go south, they'd have to drive
Well,
down the wrong lane.
Let me show you some additional pictures.
Just like they're doing right there.
Matthew,
Spin it.
You
Is it
zoom in on
spin?
those license plates?
see, there's another shot. Now, here's another, with cars, you see what Mr. Likely just said. If you have any cars coming up Lily Way from Cider Mill School direction and a car heading southbound, you've got one lane to traverse, and there's no way because it's all fenced in right up to the tennis courts.
So really, it seems to me if they were interested in if the planning and zoning were interested in letting that happen, they'd really have to probably double the size of that road in order to make it work.
Make that southbound lane.
Yeah.
2 lanes.
I'm not
I'm
making
surprised we're allowed to do that, though.
this. Okay, we do have a video too that kind of explains it. Mike made some interesting comments you may want to share.
Nice complete stop on that street.
And you have students going left and right. Again, so we'll look to see what happens with that. I don't know, Mike, if you want to comment.
When I was outside today capturing these beautiful shots of school buses, there was a student coming out of the parking lot, several. One made a right turn and saw that a car was coming down, had to wait, and then took off to make sure that he got through before another car came down. But the student that really concerned me was the one who had to take a left turn out of the student parking lot, and there was a bus there, and he could not see a car coming down the road. So
The wrong way down the road.
No,
The right way from
Okay.
southbound.
from the high school
Okay, got it.
heading, and the bus was blocking his view.
Right.
So he kind of inched out and was smart enough. Yeah, yes, and was smart enough to wait because I was right across the street and would have tried to signal him. But how many situations are like that? Especially when you have students, they're pleased to be out of school and on to other activities, and may not be as cautious.
Cutting between a bus when a car is coming down.
Well,
they're moving fast. You never see them.
The bus was parked, but the car is coming down, and unless you pull right up to the middle of the road, you don't have the visibility.
Right.
So we'll see what we'll let you know as soon as we hear thanks Mike, from the P&Z on the traffic study as to what they've concluded. But that is our concern, not with the fact that they want to build a child care center, but it's just the traffic.
Thank you very much. We now move on to committee reports. Chris, anything to report? Laura?
No, PTA council met for the first time today, which is, they kind of muddled through last year without
Who's the president?
Beth Johnson, Kimber Felton, taking over as VP of Budget, which is
Oh,
great.
I saw Kimber
Kimber
here
took
this
over
evening.
budget?
Yeah, right. And so they're going full speed ahead, so.
Wonderful. Thank you. Gil? Saving for last.
Told I have a report today.
You do have one, I would assume. Anything to report on buildings?
Yes. With respect to the restrooms, most of the renovated restrooms were functional for the first day of school. We are a couple weeks behind in actually closing out the project. as there are 8 punch list items that need to be completed, and they all involve items that are on order. I am meeting with Bill Brennan on Tuesday to have the final group of change orders on the project signed off on by him. John Murphy and I and the architect have signed off on them. And today, in reviewing the numbers with Turner and with Town Hall, this project will come in on its budget.
Will we get all of the bathrooms renovated that we had planned?
No. No. In the spring, what happened was we had to scale this project back. The estimate that we went forward to the town with a year ago, or earlier, was an old estimate, and that is one of the lessons learned from this project is that you continually need to update your estimates. We will have 8 new restrooms at Middlebrook. So we have 4 sets of restrooms that are done, plus a refreshed handicapped access single-user restroom and a new single-user handicapped room. The restrooms adjacent to the auditorium are the ones that were not refreshed or not redone. It was Jory Higgins' choice that we do the ones that the students use the most. And those students don't use those restrooms the most.
So those were the only ones that weren't done in Middleborough? That were in the plan?
That were in the plan. That were in the plan. We did 14 restrooms at the high school, plus the preschool, and then on the first floor there is a new handicapped access faculty restroom that was created out of a part of a custodial closet. What was not done were the restrooms on the north end of the second floor and the third floor of the high school and the field house, but the field house was never really in the estimate that we went forward with.
So there's 4 that we didn't do in the high school?
There's 6 actually.
6.
One.
Are you counting the gym in that though?
I'm not. On the third floor, there's a student, girls and boys, and there's also a faculty,
Okay.
men's and women's, which is in pretty good shape. But we chose not to do the ones on the north end of the second and third floor because of the adjacency to the 2,000 restrooms in the new classroom addition. So the whole central core is done. The south end is done by the nurse's office and in the science wing. And I think on Bob's advice, we chose not to renovate the ones that were the least used. What I will say is that the ones that we did renovate were the ones that had the significant piping problems in the walls. The one out here, the one down in the science wing, the one outside the nurse's office, and then on the first floor as you walk in the front door. All those walls were opened up and the copper piping and valves were replaced in there.
Right. I'm going to make a statement so as not to put you on the spot, but I think we as a board can probably assume at some point in the not too distant future we're going to see a request to do these other 8 bathrooms. We probably need to be thinking about that coming along lines and dealing with that as it comes.
Karen, do you have a sense of how far short we were on funds to have completed the entire project?
We had $1.47 million to work with. If you go to the second floor, walk out here, go down the hall, second floor, there's a girls' bathroom and a boys' bathroom. That was our ad alternate one, and the price on that was $78,000. So if you take it that you have 3 sets of bathrooms at that price in this building, and then you have the 2 near the Middlebrook Auditorium, the problem with those bathrooms is there's not enough space to make them code compliant within the current footprint, let alone make them large enough to accommodate a public performance in Yeah, yeah, in the auditorium. So that's a whole different animal there.
Mhm.
Likewise, the restrooms for the field house are inadequate when there's any sort of large
Mhm. Right.
gathering. So, you may choose to have several different restroom projects.
So about $500,000 short?
It really depends on what you do with the restrooms at the Millbrook Auditorium.
It
That's like
seems
a
like,
whole
Yeah.
it seems like,
Ballpark.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have roofs to report on?
The Middlebrook roof is substantially complete. There are some punch list items there that need to be completed, but like the restrooms, that project will come in on budget. They're currently working on the Comstock roof, and that is scheduled to be completed end of this month, beginning of October.
Now, when you say on budget for the Middlebrook roof, I'm assuming that is all the square footage of roofing that we thought was going to be done?
Was done.
Was done?
Was
Okay,
done.
good.
And on Miller Driscoll, the building committee selected, after a full day of interviews in July, Tyson Kim Partners as the architect and BVH Integrated Systems as the engineer. The Board of Selectmen has approved that selection and has issued a letter of intent to award contract to Tyson Kim. A draft of the formal AIA contract has been forwarded to our town council, Ken Bernard, for his review and comment. At the kindergarten, first grade, and second grade open houses this week, Cheryl updated parents on the status of the project, and Fred will do the same thing at the preschool open house, which I believe is on the 25th. We have tentatively scheduled a parent focus group open to the parents at Miller Driscoll for the evening of October 1st. The building committee has formed subcommittees. We're working on issues of reimbursement. Do we seek reimbursement or not? What type of heating, ventilation, air conditioning system should go into that building? The question of portable classrooms, it appears that we will need portable classrooms because this will be a renovation that is done in phases. So there will be some need for portable classrooms. So we have a subcommittee looking into the cost of that, where to place them, those sorts of things. And then we have a subcommittee looking at the future of teaching and learning. Chuck and Cheryl are heading that up, and Cheryl did an absolutely wonderful job at the last building committee meeting of her vision of where early elementary teaching and learning is going to be going. I find this very interesting. To get a fuller understanding of our program and how the existing spaces are used at Miller Driscoll, and also what is needed, our architects have taken which I think is a sort of unique approach, of embedding themselves in the school at each grade level for an entire day. They are going to be a fly on the wall at each grade level for an entire day to give them an idea of the program, how the spaces are used, where they're sufficient, where they're insufficient, and so forth. And in addition, they've scheduled meetings with the preschool staff, the K-2 administration, and the specials teachers. And those will be happening before the end of the month. There's still a lot of unknowns about this project, but it is moving forward. It's moving forward slowly. It's moving forward carefully, because we are taking the time that we need to fully understand the issues before making some critical decisions. So we are about a month behind schedule where we thought we would be. And one of the reasons we're a month behind schedule is because the original schedule called for us to do our interviews on July 17th, which we did, and to make a selection 2 days later. We spent some time after the interviews, where we had narrowed it down to our two top choices, checking references, and then doing site visits, and then coming back, and we actually didn't decide we didn't vote on an A&E team until August 15th. And then there was the added step of having to go to the Board of Selectmen to get their blessing on our choice, and that was done on August 19th. So we're just about a month behind in the process. So that's it.
Karen, this all depends on the town supporting.
Yes, and that's the process that we're working through now is we need to look at all of the issues and somehow come up with a cost. What's the cost of removing the windows? What's the cost of abatement? What's the cost of the roof? And all of those different things, so that when we go to the town, we have an estimate that'll be good. And we don't run into the same problem that we ran into with the restrooms, where the estimate wasn't complete.
I know that the town's been throwing around the number 28 million, 14 million one year, 14 million the next year. Where does the analysis that you're doing and those numbers meet? When does that happen?
When we sent out the RFP for architectural and engineering services, we were told by Bill Brennan that we could use a number of $32 to $35 million for the complete project cost, including soft costs.
Okay.
So that was the number that people bid on.
Yeah.
We don't know yet if that's the right amount of money.
Okay. Fair. Anything
That's
else?
it.
Thank you very much.
That's how I spent my summer.
At this point, we move on to Dr. Richards talking about the Middlebrook Athletic Field.
All right, thank you. I'm pleased to welcome.
First, I'm
I'm
going to
sorry.
recuse myself because Casey Healy, who represents the Wilton Youth Football Association, practices law at Gregory and Adams, as does my husband.
Okay. Thank you.
Step away from the table.
Pleased to welcome Mr. Casey Healy. As Karen said, represents Wilton Youth Football, to provide the board with an update on the project to install a turf field at Middlebrook and some lights for the facility. Mr. Healy is here to talk about the process that the group has gone through with the town. This is not an action item for the board, but we did want to hear from Mr. Healy on the status of the project. So welcome, Mr. Healy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. I represent Wilton Youth Football and a bunch of other groups and individuals who are interested in renovating the Middlebrook field, including but not limited to the Wilton Field Hockey Association, the Youth Boys Lacrosse Association, the Youth Girls Lacrosse Association. I think all of you are familiar with the field, but just to set the background, there's an existing sod field at Middlebrook that's located southerly of the parking lot, that's located westerly of the school building, basically located between the tennis courts and the Little League field, with Medeiros soccer field further back into the woods. The field is currently illuminated, but that lighting doesn't adequately light the field, and it certainly doesn't meet today's standards for lighting of athletic fields. For any of you who have been up there, the field is in very poor condition. It's currently now used only in the months of August through November for youth football. It doesn't accommodate the size of a field hockey field. Even for practice, it's in no condition to play field hockey on it. Parks and Rec routinely shuts the field down in the spring in order to try to get it to come back in time for the youth football season in the fall. A few years ago, Parks and Rec tried to restore the field to a condition that it was viable for use in the spring as well as the fall. and it was unsuccessful. The field would have to be totally rebuilt, whether you were going to go with sod or, as is proposed, artificial turf. So the proposal is to raise private funds to reconstruct the field with artificial turf, to put in lighting that would meet today's standards for illuminating athletic fields. Let me just hand out, although it was in your PDF, here's copies of the site plan prepared by Blades and Govens, so-called SP1.
Thank you.
The highlights of the plan are, you will be left with a regulation turf field that would accommodate field hockey, football, and lacrosse. It will not be a regulation field for soccer because it's not wide enough or long enough, but soccer could cut the field in half, and lower age level soccer could be played where they have just a smaller field and not as many children on the field for a particular game. As previously noted, the field would be illuminated with new lights that meet today's standards for athletic fields, similar to what you have at the stadium, varsity baseball, varsity softball, Christine Lilly Field, etc. The field will be fenced since it is a turf field. If you look at the top of the plan, so southerly of the parking lot, you'll see new walkways to the field. Those walkways would be handicap accessible. There are basically no walkways to the field currently, much less any sort of handicap accessibility. If you look to the right, to the left end of the field, adjacent to the tennis court and the gymnasium, new access to the field would be provided for maintenance vehicles and more importantly for emergency access. You currently can't get an ambulance or the medic down with their vehicles to the field. Right above the so-called team areas, there will be a pad installed which would accommodate temporary bleachers if somebody wanted to put in a couple temporary bleachers. And those are basically the highlights of what's being proposed in terms of the site plan. Lastly, before answering questions, the process and approvals. We filed 2 applications for land use approvals for this project. The first is an application to amend the town zoning regulations to provide standards and requirements for athletic field lighting. The town's current zoning regulations prohibit any lighting that's higher than 30 feet. Those regulations are really meant to address commercial parking lots, and they do not come close to addressing the needs for athletic field lighting. We put in standards and guidelines, requirements for submitting a photometric plan to the commission, showing that you're not going to spill light off the field, certainly not onto neighboring properties. An as-built photometric plan, if you're approved and you construct, you're required to get a special permit from the Planning and Zoning Commission for athletic field lighting. And or as importantly, I think there's been some misinformation put out there by some that athletic field lighting pursuant to this regulation would be permitted in any residential zone. That is incorrect. The regulations state that you can put athletic field lighting in residential zone provided the property is either publicly owned or if it's privately owned, it has to be used institutionally, such as a church or a private school. Planning and Zoning Commission will take up that application in a public hearing to be held on September 23rd. The second application we filed was with the Inland Wetlands Commission for approval of this site plan. With that said, the field, the walkways, everything that's shown on the site plan, none of it is located within even an area that's regulated by the Inland Wetlands Commission. much less being in a wetlands. But the drainage from Middlebrook School building and property currently eventually daylights into a wetland. We're proposing to interconnect what little drainage will be coming off the field and making its way to the wetland with the Middlebrook School existing drainage system. So the Inland Wetlands Commission, and more importantly, Director of Environmental Affairs Sesto, suggested that we file an application with the Commission. We have done that, and that application will be heard by the Wetlands Commission on September 26th. The final step of the approval, if those two applications are approved, would be to file basically the same site plan we filed with wetlands with the Planning and Zoning Commission requesting the special permit. We're unable to do that at this point, obviously, because there are no regulations for athletic field lighting, so we couldn't show the lighting. If we filed an application now, we could simply show the field itself, and we want to take it up all at once. We have presented this proposal to the Board of Selectmen at their meeting on September 3rd. They certainly seemed generally in favor of it, and we presented the proposal to the Parks and Recreation Commission last night, and they said they were definitely in favor of it. So that's a brief overview of the project. Would be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
I think the first question I'd like to ask, and it's wonderful that this organization is looking to provide such a generous gift to the town. But we're all aware of Fujitani Field and Pristine Lily Field. As they age, they're facing need for significant repair or replacement that, as our first selectman has pointed out, isn't in the budget. I've spoken with the first selectman. I understand that it's less expensive to maintain a turf field than it is a grass field. But we have not been putting that savings aside since those two fields were installed. Do you know of any plans, or do you have any plans that you can share that might help manage the longevity of the field and future maintenance and replacement?
A couple points, and unfortunately, neither Mr. Blades nor Mr. Govern could be here this evening, so they could comment on the longevity of the field. Mr. Gubbins told the Parks and Recreation Commission last night the technology on these fields is changing all the time, so the longevity of the fields, every year that goes by, it's better than the field that was built 2 or 3 years ago. How they are used is important. Using the Fujitani Field as an example, Mr. Gubbins would say, when you start having events other than athletics, and not that there's anything wrong with certain events, particularly Relay for Life, graduation, you tax the field a bit when you do that year after year after year. He estimated this field would be good for 12 to 15 years with the current technology, as long as it was maintained properly. The maintenance obligation will be turned over to the Parks and Recreation Department, obviously, because the field is going to be donated to the town, so they'll be responsible for maintaining it. As to future replacement, Mr. Brennan has expressed that concern to the fundraisers. They have already, it's my understanding, not just because of this field, but they have already instituted in their fee structures capital improvement. They put aside part of the fees they collect every year towards capital improvement in the future, and they're going to continue to do that. And they also are looking at numbers to budget out how much money the town would save, to your point, and I think some discussion would likely take place with the town that you really need to be putting aside money to take care of the field, whether it's sod or turf or otherwise. But again, in summary, they are aware that the selectmen would likely be looking for, I don't want to use the word commitment, but some understanding as to what will these associations be able to do in the future to help to contribute to the cost of a replacement when that time comes.
Thank you. And then the other point is relative to lighting. I had read a statistic, and if you don't have it on the top of your head, that's fine, that said some distance away from the field with this new lighting system, the overwash of lighting is no greater than a flashlight. Do you have any information that you can share on that?
No, the Musco Lighting is the lighting consultant, and they have done the photometrics. And at the presentation of the Planning and Zoning Commission on the 23rd, Andrew Dijak of Musco will be there to answer questions such as that. But as an example, one of the members of the Parks and Recreation Commission last night, or it might have been the director, Steve Pierce, noted that what they found when they lit the baseball field and the softball field, that the higher you go up, the more concentrated you can make the lighting on the field, and you can virtually get nearly no spillage, that you could step out of the early on, I don't know if it's still the case, you could step out of the bullpen in one direction and you were basically in the dark. And the regulation that we submitted to the commission has minimum spillage allowance at the property line of whatever particular, in this case, Middlebrook property that you'd be putting the lighting on. Once you get away from, not too far away from the field, you're going to be in the dark.
Do we have any feeling from the district's perspective on how this may help or hurt our gym classes?
Well, I think it, as Mr. Healy mentioned, I think one of the, in talking with the Middlebrook administration, one of the problems we face in the spring is, and in the fall as well, is with rainy days, a period of rain and then a nice day, the field is now still not usable. So I think the advantage of the turf field is it does give us play surface that can be utilized because of the drainage systems that these fields have, can be utilized for physical education purposes as well. And it does expand our opportunities in periods just after inclement weather.
And I apologize, I did have that, and I forgot to note that it would be usable pretty much year-round by the PE classes. And in addition to the rain events, and I'm not trying to make jest, there's also a geese problem with at least that sod field, if not a lot of others, that certainly for PE classes present a use issue at times.
Also a health issue.
Yes.
Other questions?
The where you show the parking lot, that's exactly as it is today, so we're not cutting into the parking lot space at all.
Not touching it.
Casey, how much more space would you need to accommodate a regulation soccer field?
I don't know the answer to the space question, but I'm fairly certain, and I can check with Mr. Blades or Mr. Govins. I don't think there's enough room to do it even if we wanted to.
Right. Yeah, I think you would do it.
Between putting in the walkways, the Little League field, there's a topographic drop-off in one direction. We do not want to do anything that impacts the parking. That they just couldn't get it to the size of a soccer field.